Good afternoon, everybody. All right, so we are back in the studio after a while.
A small while.
A small
Nothing
while.
crazy. Nothing crazy.
A small while. But every once in a while, I have to remind myself, how much I enjoy doing this, and so I'm like, let me get back at it. So before we begin, hey Bryce,
How you doing?
how you doing?
I'm good. It's a little hot. It's a little steamy.
It's a little warm.
We good.
In
We
this
good.
heat wave, or heat New Jersey heat wave or whatever, and it is a little warm. You know what I mean? We just been dealing with it, but summer is here.
Summer's here.
It's supposed to be warm in the summer,
Yeah,
so that's
it's a good
what's
thing.
supposed to happen.
It's a good thing.
Because soon we'll be complaining about it's so cold.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you know how that goes.
Yeah. But
So-
doing well though. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Been busy. You know how that is. We are busy.
Yeah.
Constantly. But busy is not bad. But and part of my busy has been traveling, doing
Right.
some things with family and
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's been going.
That's
been
good.
going. So we're back on it. We're back at it. You know what I'm saying. We're gonna do a show today. We'll be back at you again before the summer is over.
Yes.
We're not making no promises because we don't want unrealistic expectations. So, but I thought, when I was thinking about what to talk about today, because, I always have like this different things that, just kind of come up or whatever.
Sure.
And recently, I've been thinking about, people will ask that question, like, what advice would you give your younger self? You know what I mean? Like if you had the opportunity to tell your younger self some advice, some suggestions, whatever, what would you do? And so today, the topic of today's show is lessons for your younger self, because I feel like as we get older, we get more wisdom. At least that's how I like to see it.
Very reflective.
You should get more
Very
wisdom. Let me say
reflective.
that. And even if that wisdom is coming from like mistakes made, that kind of thing, I think it's just things. So I thought today, and I would like for you guys, certainly comment and, send me, you guys, all of my social media on Instagram and Facebook or whatever,
Right.
send me some posts or whatever, what I mean?
Right.
Just on what you feel like some of your advice would be. But when I thought about this, I said, and it doesn't really matter how old you are
No, it
to
doesn't.
me, because you could be like 30 and what you would tell your 20-year-old self.
Right, absolutely.
You could be 25 because a lot can happen in a short amount of time in our lives. Like, and granted, I'm not 25, I'm not 30, I'm not 40.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I am the wonderful, fabulous age of 50.
Oh, that's right.
And
that's right.
so when I thought about the list, at first I had like a couple of things and then it just started flowing. I was like, I would tell myself this
Yes,
and this.
right, absolutely.
So I felt like we would go through some of this stuff might resonate, with folks. Some of it may not, what have you. Or we may, we're going to just kind of like flow with it.
That's fine. Yeah, that works.
So one of the things I thought of, the first thing I thought that, I would tell my younger self or what have you, is that things will be okay.
Regardless.
Yeah, things
right?
will be okay.
So you wouldn't necessarily like worry
Yeah.
or
Right. Or it'll work out. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, okay, just don't do anything. I'm not saying it because I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Right.
But to me, it's like you're going to go through some stuff in life. Yes, you're going to go through some adversity. You're going to go through some stressors. There's going to be some times, how people talk about like the hills and the valleys. You're going to be in some valleys on occasion.
Right.
But as you get older, you recognize things will be all right because it's all part of the journey.
Yeah.
So even the adversity that you had is part of the experience. And a lot of times, if you don't have that adversity, like there's been times in my life where there's been adverse situations.
Sure.
If I didn't have those situations, I wouldn't have learned those lessons.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't be where I am now.
Absolutely. But see, the thing is that you had to go through them
Right.
to develop the confidence that,
Right.
you know what, it's going to work itself out.
Right. And
You know
so
what
that's
I'm
the
saying?
thing is sometimes, and I know where you're going with
Yeah,
it. I
that's the
know where you're
only
going because we do have folks and maybe a generation of folks that going through stuff is not your bag, as they say. As
No,
the young
it's
people say.
not your thing.
They're like,
Yeah.
I can't.
It's not
You
your
know, and
thing.
it's unfortunate because I feel like it's my generation that's raising a generation of
Right.
young people that are like, we don't want you to go through any kind of adversity or stress or anything like that because we want to just pave the way. And that's just not life. That's not helping.
Well,
it's not.
realistic, but
Yeah, it's definitely not realistic.
But see, now as we flow through the lifespan, then we become those elder statesmen that was giving us advice
Right.
So it's like, we just switch roles. It's almost like
We do.
we talk about, this music was terrible.
Yes.
It was better in my day.
And I'm like, we had Marvin Gaye, who was talking about sexual healing.
Sexual healing. Or even if we go
that
rap.
I was listening to
Right.
when I was straight up in elementary school and was jamming to it.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And in hindsight, trying to figure out, should I have been listening to this? But I wasn't influenced by it, but it was just like, it was the jam.
I didn't even really know what sexual
Right. We
healing
didn't know
was
what
at
the heck we
time.
were listening to. Right. It was just like, oh, this is jamming. Exactly. Like when I get that feeling. Right. I'm like, that's what we were doing.
Right.
And not even recognizing like,
Right, this is what it is.
probably inappropriate.
Right.
On several levels. So, but I think the things, and I'm not, I get it. I'm not knocking, parents. I know parenting is a tough job.
There's no manual.
There's no manual. Exactly. Yeah. The thing is though, if we're trying to help young people, because stuff is going to happen. Sure. Adversity is going to happen. I keep saying adversity because that's what it is. It's like, it's these situations that you feel like, okay, you might feel lost. You might feel like you don't know what you're going to do. Those things are going to happen in life. Right. And there is a purpose for going through those things. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm not saying that, granted, some things are worse than others, but some of those situations, we need to go through them so we can make decisions, so we can learn how to cope. We can develop strategies on how to cope, and we can then come out on the other side better for it. And so, our parents and grandparents or what have you, aunts and uncles, they let us go through some of that stuff. They were like, oh, okay, so, you don't want to work during the summer? Well, then, I don't know what you're going to be doing. Right, exactly.
But that's the thing. The thing is that, see, we always try to, I think the job of every generation is to improve upon each one.
Right. We try to pave the way for that generation that's coming after us.
And see, we say, well, but think about it, right? So there was a generation out there that said, well, the way to keep a kid in line was, well, let me spank that behind, right? Let me do that.
Which we know that's, and I know there'll be some people don't agree. It was like, well, we need to talk more. We need to give more choices. Right. And
and you see the give and take of both.
Right. And it's the give and take of both, but we also see some extremes, because that's the thing. Is people, will take something to the extreme.
Right, absolutely.
And, but also we do have kids now that, they don't fear their parents. And they don't think there should be any fear. And I'm just saying, like, I know, my mom is no longer with us, but as a grown up, I still feared the wrath of her. I feared my grandmother. And that was a healthy fear, because it's a fear that kept me in line and kept me respectful.
Right, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I also felt like when I left my house, what I did outside my house represented my family.
All the time.
So I didn't want to go out here and cut up and act a fool in the street.
Right.
Because I knew that would reflect how I was raised.
That's right.
And there's a difference now. That doesn't really, that's not always a thing. And I get it. There's a lot of other influences. We didn't have social media. We have all this other stuff.
Right.
But I'm saying, I guess to get back to what we're saying is the idea is, the journey that we take in life. Yeah. Everything happens for a reason.
It does. I think the journey,
whatever it is.
The journey, I think the purpose for it is for us to gain the perspective.
Yeah, perspective, knowledge, insight. Yeah. You learn some new skills, or sometimes you just learn what you shouldn't do.
Right.
Like you learn, okay, let me not do that again, because this is what kind of trouble it got me into.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's amazing how it changes from the generation.
Oh yeah.
Like the music thing, like, because in my father, I remember he was like, oh, this hip hop is terrible.
Right.
This gang run, this jail. And this is like 88, 87, 86. But yet, he was a father, a baby of the 70s. So he's into all that.
You got your Motown,
Lionel Richie, all that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying now, look at how things have evolved now. Look at how things are. So it's like, Sometimes the older generation has to remember that they was once.
And we do forget that, because that's the other thing too. Like even with, the idea of younger, and again, our younger self, telling your younger self like to listen, because that's another thing, like to just listen. Because sometimes, older generations, they have knowledge and they have stuff, but we don't listen.
We don't listen.
When we're younger, we don't. And young people, I think that's all generations. You just
I think it's common.
It is very common that you're not going to listen because you're like, oh, what do they know? Or they didn't experience it the same.
Right.
And then when we get older,
Right. Then we understand.
We're like,
oh, wow.
you need to listen to me, young blood, because I'm the one. I've been through this, and so we're going through that same cycle.
It's just part of the whole evolution of I think of life. I was with a kid yesterday, and he was just like, "Yo, you know, I hate counseling. I hate counselors. I mean, you know, they always try to get in your business, and you know, all I know is that you might blackmail me or
not blackmail.
He was like, "Yo, listen now, you don't know what I mean. You know, always somebody they understand. You don't know what I've been through. You ain't been through blah 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 blah." And all I could say was, "Who told you that, young man?
Right?
How do you know that?
How do you know what I've been through?
How you know?
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
How you know? And blackmail you for what?
Right.
I said, listen.
Your video game?
Oh, you just want to get paid. You just want. I said, listen. Hold up, bro. Listen. I tell me Tell me what do I gain by blackmailing you? You know what I'm saying?
It's an interesting choice of words you chose. Like, you might blackmail me.
Right?
Like, what are you about to tell me that I would have? Because that's the concern. Like, what information do you have that I would be able to use to blackmail you? So, yeah.
Yeah. So I just think it's just knowing how, like, you know, that's where I think that gap is because we get older, we get wiser, we've matured, we're reflective.
Yeah. And then we want to pass it down.
And then we forget.
But yeah, we forget. And because we forget why young people like don't necessarily want to listen. Like, they don't want to hear it because they don't feel like there's any connection that we have.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Until they get to it. And it's a shame that we have to get to an age to then recognize, oh, you know what my father or whoever was telling me, this older person was telling me was because I don't mean like, you know, older adult. I mean, like, you know, so because you know when you're 20 you think 50 is old,
right? Absolutely.
When you get to 45 you like 50 ain't old.
50 ain't old.
Shoot, not at all.
Right, not
okay
at all, right.
And when you get to 60 and 70 you like, shoot, that's the new 50.
That's the new 50, right.
So the idea is when you get older you then start to recognize, but when you're younger you don't want to hear any of that because also I think, you know, when you're a younger person you think, I got this, I know it. Even if it's a false sense of confidence, we just feel like we got it and we know it.
God.
And then until we find out we're not, and we don't got it.
And I tell you, I can still remember the day. Not the day, but I can tell you where I was when I said, "Oh, my father did love me." He was trying to look out for me.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I agree with you on that. Because
you know what
I think,
it just hit me one day, like,
when you felt like they were holding you back or too strict or that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, wait a minute. I get that. I had that moment too when you're like, you know, they were protecting me from a lot of things that I would have been exposed to otherwise.
But it's not. I often say it's not until you yourself.
Yeah, then you
get
recognize.
in trouble,
you're like, oh.
And then you're like, oh, okay, this is.
Or you see what's going on with your peers, and what's not going on with you, and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
I get it now.
So
you know?
So just the things will be okay. You know, it'll work out. You know what I mean? I know that can seem a little like, okay, but it doesn't mean that you don't need to do anything.
Sure.
So the next one is take action. That's something I think, you know, I would say to my young, like, take action sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, you know, there's something that comes up and we need to do something and we don't do anything. We're just like, we avoid it. We're like, we don't want to communicate. We don't want to do all that. And then it gets worse. You know what I mean? Because the idea is taking action is better than doing nothing. And that could be for anything. That could be anything. Like, you know, from assignments in school to, you know what I mean? Whatever you need to do, like sometimes you're presented with something and if you don't take some action, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
And the funny thing is that doing nothing is an action, right?
It is an action, but you got to be ready for the consequences of that action.
Of doing nothing.
You have to be ready for the consequences and that's a lot of times like, you know, folks will just sit back, be like, well, I'm just going to act like it doesn't exist.
Right.
But that's not stopping it from getting worse.
That's the part. And then, you know what? I'm realizing that there's variant degrees of that, you know, amongst young people. So there are some young people that
very action.
They're still they still lack actions and they still, you know, whatever. But then there's some that might be far off worse and then worse. So it's different variant.
It is. And it also depends on the situation. And I think just because of, you know, my work with younger folks, our work with younger people, you know, we see where there's a circumstance or a situation where it's like, well, are you going to do something? And they're like, well, you know, or they may not know what to do.
Right.
So then it's about the options. What are your options or whatever? Or maybe just a fear of stepping out and doing something that's not comfortable or whatever.
Right. And see, that's where if I could change anything, I would change that. You know what? Not being afraid of change.
Yeah, if we had a magic wand, because that change piece is, and even if it's a good change, and don't get me wrong,
It takes time.
we've all been there because it's the adjustment period.
Right.
Like, I always, anybody that like knows me well knows I'm famous for saying like, oh, I got to wrap my head around it.
That's right.
It could be something that's great. It could be a wonderful thing, but I'm like, I got to take a minute. I got to wrap my head around
I
that.
think for that.
Yeah, I need. Like you said, you got to ponder, right? And it could, like I said, it could be something good, but it's just the change piece, and I think change is so tough for us. Even if it's a change, it's going to be for the better. Yeah. So it can be a little.
But when you're younger, I didn't look at change like how I embrace change now. Is more of, okay, if something's taken away from me or I'm not granted something or whatever, I often say that it's not the time for me.
Right. So, so you have a different perspective. Your perspective is different.
But back then,
it's like, why can't I have this?
Why can't I have it?
I should have it.
I should have
it should be happening
XYZ.
for me.
So,
the world is against me. All that kind of stuff.
But it took going. You know what I'm saying? That's the hardest part for, I think, individuals our age is that we because we become more protective now as we get older. And I don't want my kids to go through the stuff that I went.
And I get that. And
but they may have to.
But the thing is, and what's most likely you got to think that's going to happen is they're not going to go through what you went through because you have provided, and like a lot of parents, you're making sure that they have what they need, they have what they want. It is different. However, there's some of those like smaller things, those smaller experiences that they do need to go through because if they don't go through them when they are out, because here's the thing, you're not raising your kids. You're not raising your kids to stay in your house. You're raising them for out there in the real world.
That's right. To be
and out there in the real world is not going to say, hey, you know what? We're just going to pave the way. We're going to give you an easy road to go. No, it's not.
Right.
And there's all kinds of things that play into that. Race plays into that.
Sure.
Socioeconomic status plays into that. Education, all that intersectionality that happens. And, especially for like people of color, we have to raise our kids differently.
A little different.
We do. We have to raise our kids for a world, no matter what world they're in right now.
That may not be kind to you.
Right. That may not be kind to you. And for no other reason than the way you look.
The way you look. That's it.
That's it.
And that's a sad reality.
We have to instill that awareness in kids early.
Well, and
it's not even like, I can wait till you are almost 16, 17. No. I got to school you on that. Yeah. Based on what neighborhood we live in, all of that. You have to learn that very early. And that's a shame, but that's a reality of the world we live in.
But you'd be surprised how many people will fight against that narrative. Which
I know. I know. I know they would. They would.
That you need to. But I remember I said, the kid was having a problem with the teacher. I told him he thought it was because of, he was black or whatever. And I said, how can we still succeed?
Right.
We still got to persevere.
You still got to persevere.
It's my job to help you persevere regardless of that thought.
Right. Because that's what we have to do.
But then you'll have somebody else say, that child shouldn't have to go through that. That's not right.
No, it's not right.
And I get that.
It's not right.
But
they shouldn't have to go through that. But it's reality. It's the same reality that says that, when they leave your house, they got to deal with some other stuff.
Reality.
So if you're not preparing them for that, then they might struggle a little bit more.
The bottom line is that people only deal with people with how they were trained to deal with people.
Yeah.
So I don't care. You could hire them. They can do well in the interview. They can do whatever. But
and I think it's a rude awakening sometimes for, younger folks.
Right.
When they get that realization of don't get me wrong, I think young people that you have groups of younger folks that are very aware and are activists and have, brought like almost like a resurgence to, activism and all that kind of stuff and are doing great things, and, then you have some that like, you're trying to take them to like a museum to learn about the history.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, why we gotta go up in here?
They don't want to.
This is in the past.
Right.
This doesn't exist anymore. It's like, let me tell you something. This ain't that long ago. Don't sleep acting like it doesn't exist. It just exists in a different form.
Don't even give me started.
Yeah, I know.
And I can't. It's like, and that's the thing. See, that's another thing with being a certain demographic.
Yeah.
There's certain things because before I speak what I really want to speak from my heart, I got to think about, okay, I got this over here. I got this over here. I gotta make a conscious choice.
Right. Well,
and that's the difference.
And sometimes it's a little bit of, what is it, code switching?
Yes.
How we have to adapt, and I think, people of color have always had to do that. And
that's the difference of how, I feel like, I have to raise my children versus maybe how a friend of mine with a different demographic has to raise their child. Yeah. It's a little different. So, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I totally agree that sometimes you have to go through your own trial. You learn. That's how you learn. When you go through your own
and that journey is the journey is there. I think what happens is that sometimes I believe in this is that we may veer off the path, the journey that's already, because I think for me, I think it's a predetermined journey. Right. Gotcha. And then sometimes what we do is we veer off that path. Yeah. And then because things will happen that will bring you back on that path. And to me, that's something bigger than me. You know what I mean?
So,
that's bigger than me.
Absolutely.
So all right, but yes, take action. Yep. All right. So the other thing is we're gonna go into we can deep. We don't got deep. And we're gonna come back to some deep stuff. Because like I said, I went in on this. I was like, oh, this is what I would tell myself. The other thing too is learn about credit. Now this thing I know. Learn about credit, debt, managing your money.
Absolutely.
Because here's the thing, even if your parents are not sitting, and this is what I would tell my younger self, because the idea is, we don't know about that. We know about it to a certain extent or whatever, but we don't know how important it is. Yeah. And you don't want to wait until you're older to realize, credit is important.
Oh, it's very important.
Paying off my bills is important.
Right.
How I manage my money from week to week, from paycheck to pay, that's important.
It's everything.
Right. It's everything.
It's everything.
It is. And and so it's, and nowadays I think, there's so much information out there. There's so many books. There's so many basic layman's terms books, and you can Google it. You ain't got to read a book. You can Google it, find out steps on how to do it. But even understanding credit and credit cards.
Oh, that's
one of the biggest things I think, and this used to happen. I don't know, when you were in college, but I know when I was in college, I think I was on campus maybe 2 weeks and had signed up for a credit card.
Oh yeah.
Because they were right there. I remember they were,
Yeah.
They were
Discover.
They were right in there. They were like, oh, you can get a free, for that free T-shirt or that water bottle.
Yeah, sign on up.
Credit card with a $500 limit. Yep. Sucker was maxed out in a week and a half.
A week and a half. Once you went to the bookstore. And you went to the bookstore.
Or you went to the mall. If you got to the mall, and then it was done.
That's right.
And not recognizing how much money you were paying on that $500 that you were going to be paying that back 25 times by the time you finish. And how you ain't had no job.
I'm just trying to pay the $25.
Right. Because you think minimum payment. And that's what they say. Right. So it's all of that stuff. And I guess on the flip side of that is we also are a generation that was yeah, we're gonna get student loans. I gotta go to college.
And that's where.
And nowadays it's very different, right?
Very different. That's where I'm saying my younger self would probably scream on my fear, be like, "Yo, why y'all ain't pay for me to go to school?" You know what I'm saying? Why y'all ain't pay for me? Everybody doing that now.
But what happens? But what also happens now is you also have a lot of younger folks, because they are so aware of debt, that they're like, well, what's the purpose of me going to college? Because I'm just going to incur debt. And is that going to really get me a job that's going to afford me to be able to pay off that debt? And so that's a concern too. And I'm not, because I think also too, because even if you go to a trade school, there's still probably some debt associated. But we still live in a society where if you don't have some type of advanced degree, it's gonna be tough. You know what I mean?
I actually, and hopefully all the listeners, once this, everybody watches and is shared and it goes out there, please, send someone to me that is debt free, because I don't know that person. Yeah. I don't know who that is. I've never,
because everybody has some debt, and don't get me wrong, that is, and I'm not saying that it's a good, because I guess it depends on what kind of debt you have. It depends on your ability to pay it off, and it depends on, I guess, what your goals are too, because the idea is to have financial goals,
right?
And it is nice to see that you have a credit card that you can actually use.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? That it's not maxed out, whatever. Sure. But the other piece is we also have to realize, I know I've said this to a few young people, a credit card is like a loan.
Sure, man.
So you can't think of a credit card as just extra money you have, because that's not it, because you got to pay it back. So it's a loan. You're borrowing from that credit card.
That's right.
That's what you're doing. You're borrowing, so you got to be able to pay it back.
Right. And that's the thing. See, back when I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, let me get
this extra money.
I got this extra money.
Yeah, this extra money. This is my extra money.
I got this. Oh, okay. Now, the only way I use a credit card is that if I'm buying a big purchase and it's 0 interest, oh, okay.
Right. Or you're getting points.
I'm getting some
mileage points.
Something. Right.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of credit cards are going in that angle, because they're like, okay, we got to give people something.
Right.
But you also have to check, but the other thing is understanding your credit score, like looking at that. We still got people that were, family members and put stuff in your name.
Yeah, it still happens.
So check it.
Oh, yeah.
For you find, you like 15.
Absolutely.
And got more bills in your name.
Right,
that still happens.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but checking your credit, you know what I mean? Making sure that because the sooner you get on top of that and understand that, trust me, it'll be so much better, because down the road, when you want to get a car, you want to get a house, you want to buy anything.
You need that.
And that is unfortunately a way that I feel like, and I will share my opinion, is that certain, as you like, demographics, certain groups of people, certain, groups that are disenfranchised are kept in a disenfranchised state because of how credit works.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Because you have to have credit to get credit. Right. That's the thing.
Some people don't understand that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. Yeah. But I think I also would tell I would pay more attention, because my father and my mother too as well did a good job of helping me understand wants, needs, and the difference between the two.
Right.
And also being a consumer.
Right.
And those are things that I wish my younger self paid more attention to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think, but for me, and everybody's answer is going to be different, but for me, the hardest thing that I think that I wish I could have done better is to adapt to change, to embrace it.
You still go back. You said adapt to change.
Embrace
Which I think is something we just have to learn, because I think as you get older, you realize maybe more so of all the changes that have happened in your life. And so then you're more like, okay, change is going to happen whether I'm ready for it or not.
You understand.
So it's easier to just kind of roll with it versus pushing against it, because pushing against it is just going to cause you more stress.
I think
once because there's so much stuff that's outside of your control.
I remember counseling this kid some years back, and he had broke up, his girl broke up with him or whatever. And he was like devastated. And I understand it, because I remember going through something like that similar during my years earlier on. But when as an adult, had I not gone through that, I'd be like, in my mind, I'm like, how long was y'all together?
Well, yeah.
He was like, we was together for a long time.
Like 3 weeks?
It was 3 months.
Shoot, that is a long time.
But I forget 3 months is like long 2 years for an adult.
When you're a kid, that's like a long time.
That's a minute.
And and it's emotional. It's an emotional thing.
They went through Christmas. We shared each other gifts.
Oh yeah, and you thinking at that moment that's your forever person.
That's it.
That's your person.
But she
not realizing that it's gonna be.
She had other plans.
She had other plans.
And as soon as and it's the key word. I just need some space, right? Which means that, right.
Oh,
you know why you said that, right? Because she was hollering at somebody,
right? Yeah.
That's what.
That's how it goes.
But it happens though.
So speaking of that though, because a lot of times things that we happen, the confidence comes into play. Yeah. So the other thing, I think another piece of advice would be your confidence will come, but work on it now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I would tell myself that, your confidence is going to come because like I said, the wisdom, the knowledge, all of that, but work on it, start working on it. Like work on your confidence, recognizing your strengths, knowing your worth, because as you get older, you'll still question those things. Right. And a lot of times that not having that confidence, whatever that looks like for you, means that you may not try something. You may not take that risk. You know what I mean? That could be great for you, but you may not take that risk because you're like, oh, I can't do this.
See, now you're coming for me, Dr. Rock.
I am not.
You're coming for me.
Because, but the thing is,
but
too,
you're right, though.
But yeah, and don't get me wrong, like self-esteem when we're younger, because, self-esteem, confidence, all those things, they're intertwined. But what happens oftentimes when we're younger, it really is the people around us that help to build our self-esteem. But sometimes that doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's just the thing. It's not enough. It's unfortunate. Or it's not enough, and it just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Or we just have other experiences that pull away from our self-esteem and our confidence. However, and I believe this, I really do. I think everybody, my grandmother used to say everybody has 5 talents.
I agree.
That's like an old saying. She said everybody has 5 talents, and it's about, recognizing what those are. And I believe that everybody has talent. I believe that everybody has skills and talent. I think everybody has something they're good at. What happens is sometimes we've stuffed that away so far because we've dealt with other stuff that we don't recognize what it is, what our strength is. And that builds the confidence. But sometimes you just have to take a chance. You just have to be like, you know what? This might not work out, but I'm going to just do it. I'm just going to do it. And you already know what we're talking about. He knows what we're talking about. Because trust me, I've been there too. A lot of times the transition and the change gets in. Because a lot of times what we've been doing, we're so comfortable.
Word.
But here's the thing. Being comfortable does not allow for growth.
Ouch.
Let me say that one more time.
Ouch.
Being comfortable does not allow. I need to write that down myself.
You do. I'm gonna take
Being comfortable does not allow for growth. And let me explain what I mean by that.
It's the truth, though.
And you always think about the it's more like an analogy of the plant. If there's a flower, you plant something in the ground and, the bulb or whatever. If it just stays there comfortable, nothing happens. It's got to push through. It's got to fight its way. It's got to ward off the bugs and whatever it is. So that's uncomfortable time.
Yeah.
But then it starts to grow.
Yeah.
And it blossoms. So if we're comfortable where we are, and I'm not saying that you don't have periods of time, of course, where you're comfortable. And I'm not saying that we always have to be working towards the next thing, but most of the time we're comfortable or we're saying that, but we're not because we want more.
Right.
We want something different.
Right.
And so if you have that drive, then you have to be ready. You have to make some changes. You have to do something different because that's going to allow for the growth. Right. And that growth is really what you're thirsty after. You're hungry for that growth. Right. So, and I'm not saying, look, ain't nobody saying it's going to be easy. Nobody is saying that it's going to be like a smooth sailing situation because it's not. I can tell you that from my own personal experience, it's not. But once you push through that dirt, it gets easier.
Yeah.
Get watered a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You start to feel yourself. You're like, okay. And also too, what happens is when we go through those periods of time where there's the growth period, once you get on the other side of it, you realize it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad.
But you got to go through it. That's the thing.
You do have to go through it. And I think that's also where the risk comes in. Yeah. That's where, depending on how, your faith is, all of that, you got to pull in all of it. You got to pull in your support system. Yeah. You got to do all of that. But you also have to just sometimes believe in yourself. You have to believe that, okay, I can do this. You know what I'm saying? Because we've all done things that weren't comfortable for us. Right. And I always think about learning to ride a bike. Like I was a late bloom on the bike ride, real late, for real. Yeah.
Not like you talking about 10 or okay. All right, we'll leave it alone.
I'll be honest. I'm gonna be honest. I was 13 when I learned how to ride a bike.
That was terrible.
But I lived down south, so riding a bike was pretty necessary.
My goodness.
Yeah. I know it was. I was I wasn't in the city.
What else did y'all do?
Right, exactly. Walking. I was walking everywhere. Learned how to ride a bike. One of my cousins taught me how to ride a bike.
Okay.
And and then it was uncomfortable. There was some falls. Yeah. It was, and a lot of times when stuff is uncomfortable, you want to stop. Yeah. You don't want to continue because you feel like this is some bleep, bleep, bleep. Yep. You know what I mean? Yep. I ain't got time for this. And you want to go back to your comfort zone. But going back to your comfort zone also means that you're not going to push, you're not going to grow. So you have to push through. Whatever that means. And maybe that does mean taking a break. That might mean taking a day, taking a break, taking a nap, whatever you need to do. But then you need to push through. So that's all I'm saying. Whoever wants to receive that can receive it. Because trust me, I had to say that to myself.
Yo, if I had turntables, I'd be scratching.
You'd be scratching.
Jewels, straight jewels, Dr. Robbins dropped.
Well, things, when it's been a while, when it's been a while, I have a lot to talk about.
Well,
all right, so the next one. Our next one is, because we got, I was like, what time is it? Oh, yeah, okay, we're going. Okay, so the next one is love can come at any time in your life. Be ready by preparing yourself. Because, you never know. Like, you never know. It
happen. Yeah, you just never know.
And so you have to start with loving yourself. Yep. You know what I mean? But love can come at any time. It can. It could come when you're 20. You might think it's there when you're 20, but then it ain't really there.
Right, ain't really there.
And so then it just, Right. And then it comes again when you're like 45.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So just, make ready, as they say. The other thing is know and acknowledge your worth.
Okay.
The earlier on that you know your worth and acknowledge that,
the better
off you'll be. I would definitely know your worth. And that just means, know that you're a valuable person.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you don't have to be doing for somebody or what it doesn't have to be about that. It's just about who you are.
Right.
You as a person, because every person is unique.
Absolutely.
But the earlier you know that, the better.
Right.
The other thing would be the next one, take care of yourself in all areas.
Yep.
So whether that's health, whether that's finances, whether that's spirituality, we've gone through that before. We talk about all these different areas, your mental health,
don't matter.
Your mental health, the emotional side, start to do that. Start to look at where you are in these, because as a younger person, it's just like self-care. The sooner you learn self-care and how to pour into yourself, how to deposit into yourself, the better, because you'll start that practice then, eating healthy, whatever it is. You don't want to wait until you in your 40s and 50s to start trying to eat healthy. Because it's not going to be easy.
Ouch.
Let me tell you, we can, look, I'm testifying here. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Okay, it's not easy when somebody's like, you need to drink like 64 ounces of water a day. It's like, what? I used to be able to function off of 2 ounces of water a day. You know what I mean? And also too, as we get older, those habits that we had when we were younger, they also catch up with us.
Right.
And sometimes that ain't good either.
Right.
We know more doctor's appointments, different medications, you know what I mean? You got aches and pains and stuff like that because, you twisted that ankle and didn't go to the doctor because you're like, heal up, you're all right.
Good,
right, I'm good. Didn't do the physical therapy.
You're really not good.
And you're not good.
Yep.
You're not good. Yep. So now you 45, whatever, or even 35. And now you got the knees of like an 80-year-old.
Right. See,
right. Or an 80-year-old's doing better.
Yeah.
Because they said, I went to physical therapy.
That's right.
They said, I took care. So take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. In the same vein as taking care of yourself, I would definitely tell my younger self, sleep and rest is important.
It is. Critical.
It is.
Critical.
You don't wait until you in our age range to realize that sleep is important.
More sleep, no.
Because what happens is as you get older, sometimes sleep is not coming to you naturally.
Right.
Sleep is not a good thing. Like when we're younger, it's like you could just sleep, just sleep all the time or whatever. Yeah. And then as you get older, it's like,
I got things to do.
Or you just don't sleep well. A lot of people have sleep issues. They don't sleep well at night, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Or you need the CPAP. That's a whole other.
I didn't heard of that.
The CPAP is like where you have sleep apnea.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Where you stop breathing as you sleep. Yeah. And a lot of things. And that comes from a lot of other things or whatever. Yeah. But, you sleep with the hose on your face and everything.
Yeah, I can't do that.
That's the whole.
I can't do that. If I need good sleep, I'm taking a Zyrtec.
Okay. All right.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. It makes you drowsy.
You self-medicate.
Yeah.
You said with a Zyrtec. It's twofold.
Yeah, it's twofold.
I was like, because you got allergies. It's not like you're just taking it.
It's a sleep aid.
So, we're just going to make sure we know.
Benadryl's a sleep aid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or melatonin. I like melatonin.
Well, melatonin is your natural. Yeah, melatonin is your natural. But the others, they got dual purposes.
They got dual purposes. That's
all right. Yeah. But what I'm saying. But sleep and rest, getting a proper amount of rest.
Critical.
Because you start, and of course, that's the joke about people that are over a certain age. I remember I went to see Kevin Hart perform, and one of his opening acts, they were was the Red Cup Boys. They had this joke, and he said, okay, how many people here are like, y'all in your 20s,
right?
Because the show started like 8, but then it didn't really get started. It's like 8:39.
Right.
He said, "Oh, then Trey," he said, well, "Y'all just getting started. Where y'all going after this? Y'all got the after party." He said, "Okay, how many people here in like their 30s, 40s or whatever?" He's like, He said, "We'll be lucky if y'all make it to 9:30."
Right.
He said, "Y'all tired now."
Yeah.
And he was absolutely right.
Absolutely.
He was not lying.
Absolutely.
Because I remember thinking, like,
why he's starting so late?
Kevin Hart ain't out yet.
Right, what's going on?
It's like, and I'm surprised because Kevin Hart is. I mean, I don't think he's not 50, but I was like, but Kevin, you doing it this late? What you doing?
Yeah, but I've noticed that because even with and he's still a great dude. He's a great dude, great coach, whatever. But I know the coach that my son played for. When it was a little later, when it was a late game.
Oh yeah, he was struggling a little bit. Struggling.
It was a little different than if it was a morning game.
He was on it, yeah. Because a lot of times it's almost like a natural thing. Like I think my younger self was certainly not a morning person. Yeah. But now I am such a morning person.
Me too.
Like I'm like, okay, get up in the morning. Yes, but it's like a weird thing because like, and my body just automatically is like, okay, like recently I've been like breaking records. I've been like 5:36, like
with no alarm.
With no alarm.
Right. So I'm
beating the alarm.
That's the circadian.
I was like, okay, so I'm in a certain. I said I'm in a different group now. I've moved to a different group.
That's correct. It's okay.
And the other thing is sleep is important to me.
Yep.
Like if there's an option of, you could go out and do this, X, Y, and Z, or you could just get some sleep. I'd be like, let me get some sleep. You know what I mean? I'd be like, I need to go out for? I can go out tomorrow.
Yeah, let me rest right now.
Yeah, like last night I wanted to move my car across the street or whatever.
Okay.
Because it was under this tree. And I was like, go outside, move the car, and just go to bed right now. I was like, I'm just go to bed. Yeah. I get that in the morning. Yeah, exactly. I was like, it'll be all right. Yeah. It's going to be hot anyway. Yeah. I'm not going. Where am I going? Yeah. So, yeah. So sleep and rest are important. All right. Got a couple more. The next is life is short.
Yes.
Before you know it. And I was like, before you know it, you're going to be 50.
Yes.
And even though I don't think, 50, I embrace 50. I think 50 is great. I honestly would not go back to the other years for all the tea in China. Sure. However, we do have to realize that you don't want to wait to recognize that life is short. Right. You don't want to wait until you get a certain age, until you get older to recognize that life is short. Absolutely. So that means that you want to live in the moment. You want to embrace the moment. And that living in the moment or mindfulness or however you want to call it is important because we spend a lot of time like, this ain't right or that or whatever. And we're wasting time. Yeah. Because before you know, and here's the thing, this is for people that live to get 50, that live to get 60 or whatever. Because some people, like there are people that didn't wake up today.
That's what I'm saying. Yep.
There are people that was just, innocently doing whatever and just didn't make it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you have to and I think that means that whatever, if there's things you want to do in life, there's never going to be the right time. Right. There's only time.
Ouch.
There's only time. There's never going to be, there's never the right time. There's never, because because what happens? We wait for everything to align. We're like, I need everything to be perfect, all of that. And that's going to cause us to then be able to pivot. No. Don't wait for the right time. Go on and do it. Just step on out. Because then you can, because the thing is, if you don't do it, you don't want to regret. You don't want to be at a certain age and you have the regrets of things you didn't do. Okay?
Very true. Very true.
And last but not least, this is probably my favorite. One of my favorites is worry doesn't solve any problems.
Ouch.
It doesn't. It doesn't solve any problems. You know what I'm saying? Like worrying about, and I'm not saying because I know worry creeps in very quickly. My kind of personal rule or whatever is like, okay, I worry for like a little bit. But I give myself a little bit of time.
And nothing else I can do about it.
And then I'm like, all right, let's hit the ground running. What we got to do?
Because guess what? There's nothing else I can do about it.
Right. It's nothing else. And the worry in and of itself does not, because if you're not having action that comes as a result of the worry, then the problem is still going to exist and possibly get worse. Right. So that's why I was like, so in other words, it's just no point in worrying because worrying doesn't solve the problem. And some things are outside of our control. You just have to do what you need to do. Right. And then, hope for the best.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right, though.
So, all right.
Dropping jewels. I just want to say, I don't know about how y'all feel, but I'm gonna be straight up. I've missed you, Dr. Robert. I did.
I've missed you too.
This is more than you know. Like this is something I've been praying about, and just to hear you kind of talk or whatever. Like this is very inspiring, and that's why I love doing it.
Well, yeah,
Very
and you know what?
inspiring.
And I've missed this. I've missed this. I've missed our conversations. You know what I mean? And I was like, let me get back at this. You know, because you got to do the things you enjoy. You got to do the things you enjoy. So, you know,
what? I'll be honest. I don't know. I know we're done, but you know what it is? It's because it's the fear. It's the fear of the unknown.
Oh, yeah.
But it could be a negative thing, and also could be a positive thing.
right. But the thing is, but you're not.
fear.
You know, I mean.
It's scary.
And you know, this is something that somebody told me. So I'm using this from someone else. Actually, my godmother told me this, and I needed it. It came right at the perfect time. She said, fear is the bully on the playground. And since she told me that like a week or two ago, I've used it so many times because it makes so much sense. Because when you think about the bully on the playground, they stop you from doing what you need to do. They stop you from moving forward. They take something from you. They take your joy. You know what I mean? It's all of that. So when you think about fear, that's what fear does. Fear stops us from moving. Fear will also allow you to just say, well, I'm comfortable where I am, but you're not really. You want more. You want more. You want more for yourself. You see the possibilities, but the fear stops you from that. And whatever the fear is of.
Right.
So that's the thing. That's why, you know, when you think about, you know, you don't want to give in to a bully. Yeah. So you don't want to give in to the fear. Yeah. And I get it. It's real. So I say acknowledge it, because it's not like you want to act like it doesn't exist. You acknowledge that you have the fear. You acknowledge where the fear might be coming from and what you fear. And sometimes you got to write that out. Right. It's like, well, I'm worried that maybe this won't happen or that might happen, whatever. Right. But here's the thing. You don't know what will happen. Right. You don't. But if you don't do anything, I can guarantee you what will happen. You don't do anything, ain't nothing going to change. That's it. Right, though. So, all right. So
she talking that stuff right now.
Thank you all for today, for listening.
Absolutely.
Until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Be well, be great, be you. C4C.